Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Rabbi yassir wa a'in ya kareem, waftah bil haqqi, innaka al-fattahul alim. This is my final presentation at this Deen Intensive, and I'll try and allocate a comparatively generous chunk of time at the end for you to send in those last questions, or to remind me of questions that you've nagged me on previously and that I haven't got around to responding yet. What I want to do is to try and address rather obliquely some of the larger issues that were implicit in Imam al-Ghazali's discussion of the Shahwatain, which we covered yesterday. And I want to do this because this is the largest controversy in the Islamic world today, and also the largest area of misunderstanding between the Western world and what passes as the Islamic world, not least because we ourselves can't agree on it amongst ourselves. And this is the question of gender. You might think that this ground has been raked over sufficiently, but what I think we have not done is to change the lens and to look a little bit more deeply into this issue, rather than covering the endlessly repeated bread and butter issues of hijab and niqab and inheritance and marriage and divorce and all of those things. I think enough has been said really on those topics, possibly too much, and try and speculate about how we can present to modernity, which wants an answer, the Islamic understanding of what gender might mean. Usually we don't think in those terms. We're not analytical people. We don't like abstractions. Everything is concretized in modern Islam. We forget the big picture because we're so preoccupied with arguing about the details. Perhaps one way of addressing this might be by pointing out that the Islam that exists on the ground, that we may or may not be committed to defending, is not normative. It is virtually impossible to find a community that has not in some way been changed or contaminated by the harsh winds of modernity. So the first point we need to make is that there is nothing we can point to. We can't say there is the ideal Islamic utopia where men and women exist in happy harmony and there are no problems, and this is our ideal. Our ideals are no more than ideals, and nowhere, at least on a large scale, can we claim that they have been actualized. It would be both futile and Islamically improper to suggest that any Islamic country treats women the way that the Creator subhanahu wa ta'ala has intended. And the story, despite claims of progress by national secular elites, has generally been a story of loss and retreat. I've already indicated briefly that there were many more Muslim women scholars in earlier centuries than there are today. An interesting book to look at in this regard is by Ruth Roded, who has a book called Women in Islamic Biographical Collections, in which she marvels at the extraordinarily large number of women who became distinguished, respected scholars in the Muslim Middle Ages, and also points out that the number of women who appear in those tabaqat works, the medieval biographical collections, is a much larger percentage than the women who appear today in the who's who of the Arab world. Despite all of the rhetoric of progress and equality and emancipation, the reality is that women are less prominent, in fact, than in ages past. Wisely, perhaps given her perspective, she declines to offer any reasons for this interesting paradox. But certainly the story has been one of loss, and our agenda has to be one of retrieval, because Islam is in every case a retrospective exercise. We believe that ideals are real in the past, that they have been achieved, that models of human excellence, never to be surpassed, have taken place and have been documented in past centuries, and the model for that is, of course, the ideal Medina community, of which every other ideal subsequently in Muslim history has been a pale replication. And we don't believe in some fantastic utopian ideal in the future. Islam is a realistic religion. We recognize the state of entropy in which the human race is currently trapped. But this does not mean that we simply throw in the towel and abandon any attempt, because we are accountable for every moral choice we make, and inescapably we are presented throughout our lives with moral choices. The ideals are not irrelevant.